Welcome back, writing class. I just wanted to congratulate you guys on your first week of digital learning. You guys have done such an incredible job editing your paragraphs, adding detail in your paragraphs, adding in your capital letters, your periods, your punctuation, adding in your quotation marks, finding the parts that tell when. So guys, keep up the great work. I'm very proud of you. So for today's lesson, we're going to be looking at lesson 26. We're only going to be doing parts A, B, C, D. So do not worry about part E. We will save that for next week. So let's look at part A. So I have my books in front of me, so I'm going to be reading from them. So for part A, it tells us that the writer forgot the rule about putting in commas in sentences that begin with a part that tells when. Sometimes the writer put a period instead of a comma. Sometimes the writer just left out the comma. So it asks us to fix up the passage, and it also tells us that there are 6 sentences that begin with a part that tells when. Remember that after a part that tells when, we need to have a comma. So let's look at the first sentence. The first sentence says, Maria had a pet bird that she loved very much. That doesn't have any parts that tell when, so we're going to leave that sentence just as it is. We don't need to change anything. The next sentence then says, one day. Right, so one day is a part that tells when, so instead of a period, we need to have a comma. So our new sentence should say, one day, comma, Maria noticed that its birdcage was dirty. Then the next sentence says, she got some supplies and began to clean the cage. That doesn't have any parts that tell when, so we're going to leave that sentence just as it is. The next sentence then says, while she was cleaning the cage. Right, so that's a part that tells when, so instead of a period at the end, we're going to have to change that period into a comma. So the new sentence should say, while she was cleaning the cage, comma, the bird flew out the open cage door. The next sentence then says, Maria could not catch the bird and started to cry. That sentence does not have any parts that tell when, so we're going to leave it alone just as it is. The next sentence then says, when Maria's father heard her crying. Instead of having a period at the end, because this is a part that tells when, we're going to have to change the period into a comma. But we have to be careful because right after where the period was after the word crying, we have the word he. But that word starts with a capital letter, right? We're now changing the period into a comma, so you're going to have to change that capital H into a lowercase h. So our new sentence should say, when Maria's father heard her crying, comma, lowercase h, he came into the room and tried to catch the bird with a net. And then the last sentence of that paragraph says, the bird flew out the open window. Right, so that sentence doesn't have any parts that tell when, so it's going to stay the same. What I want you guys to do now is to read the final paragraph, which starts with after the bird flew away, and to add in any missing commas into sentences that begin with a part that tells when. So if you see a part that tells when that ends with a period, make sure to change it into a comma. And if there's a capital letter that should be a lowercase letter, then change the capital into a lowercase. So you guys can pause the video now, and I'm going to move on to part B. So see you guys in part B. So welcome back, guys. So for part B, we're looking at sentences that begin with a quotation. So we're going to have to add some quotation marks, some punctuation, and then we're going to have to add some question marks because these are all, or most of them will be questions. So I'm going to read what it says in our book. Each sentence starts with the exact words that somebody said, but some sentences ask a question. I'll read sentence number 1. So sentence number 1 says, where are my books? She asked. Right. So once again, we're looking at part B, which start with quotation marks, all of these sentences. So number 1, it says, where are my books, she asked. We know that this is a question because it has the word asked, right? So what we need to add, let me find my other colored marker, should be here. There it is. Sorry guys. Is we need to add our quotation marks and our question mark. So it says, we have our quotation mark, sorry. Where are my books? Those are the exact words. So we need to have our quotation marks. But before that, I need to have my question mark. I know that it's a question because it has the word asked. So I'm going to put my question mark right before my quotation mark. And the cool thing about the question mark is that it replaces the comma. So I don't need to have a comma anymore because that's what the question mark replaced. So now my new sentence says, quotation marks, where are my books? Question mark, quotation marks, she asked. And we have our period. Let's look at sentence number 2. Sentence number 2 says, find my marker. How old is the car? He asked. How old is the car? He asked. Right, so once again, we know that this is a question because it has our keyword asked. Right, so the exact words that the person asked are, how old is the car? So I'm going to put my quotation marks. It's a question, so before the end, my end quotation mark, I need to have my question mark. Right? And the question mark will replace the comma. So my sentence should say, quotation mark, how old is the car? Question mark, quotation mark, he asked, period. So what I want you guys to do now is to read sentences 3, 4, 5, and 6. Make sure to add in our quotation marks, add in our periods at the end of the sentence. If the sentence is asking a question, we're going to need our question mark. If the sentence is not asking a question, then we're going to need to add our comma. So work on those now so you can pause the video and then I will meet you guys in part C. So welcome back guys to part C. I will read what it says in the book. So find part C. You have to be careful when you use the words him and her. So do the items in part C. Make sure the sentences are clear. So sentence number 1 says, Tim helped Robert clean the yard. Right, so we have 2 men in that sentence. So the sentence names 2 men, Tim and Robert. So in the sentence right underneath, a woman gave, and then it gives us 2 options, Robert or him, $5. Right, we have to make sure that the sentence is clear. So the sentence cannot say a woman gave him $5 because we don't know if him is referring to Tim or to Robert. So for number 1 of part C, we're going to underline or we're going to circle the word Robert. So for number 1, we're going to circle Robert. Number 2 says, Tim waved at Susan. Tim is a boy, Susan is a girl. So we have 1 boy and 1 girl. The sentence underneath then asks us or tells us everybody knew, and it gives us 2 options, either Susan or her. We can use the word Susan or we can use the word her. So on my signal, which one will we use? Get ready. Right, we can use the word her. We don't have 2 boys or 2 girls, so we know that if we use the word her, it is only referring to Susan and not to Tim. So the answer to number 2 is her, sorry. So what I want you guys to do now is read through parts 3, 4, and 5 and underline or circle the correct answer. You guys can pause the video now and then I will meet you in part D. So welcome back guys to part D. So we're almost done. This will be the last part for today's video. So for part D, it tells us to number our paper 1 through 3. We have 3 parts that we're going to be working on. And it tells us that here are sentences with too many ends. You're going to rewrite each sentence so that it only has one end. You'll put in commas for each end that you leave out. So we only want to have the word and one time in the sentence at the very end. All of the other times the word and appears, we're going to underline it and cross it out. We're going to replace those ands with a comma. So the first sentence that we have tells us the boy ran and slipped on the ice and fell down. We have the word and 2 times, right? The boy ran and slipped on the ice and fell down. So underline both of the ands. We want to get rid of the first and we're going to replace it with a comma. So when you rewrite the sentence, the new sentence should say, the boy ran, comma, slipped on the ice, and fell down. So for number 2 and 3, I want you to try those on your own. So once again, you're going to write each sentence so that the word and appears only once. Anytime you see the word and, underline it. You're going to leave the last and in the sentence, and you're going to replace all of the other ands with a comma. So once again, guys, great job this week. You guys have been working really, really hard. I can see that. I hope that this online learning is going well for you guys, and I wanted to wish you all a great weekend. So if you have any questions, please feel free to message me and enjoy. See you guys.